My name is Janelle Hazard, and I'm the Executive Director at TEFRA Institute of Contemporary Art and the curator of Seed and Solstice. TEFRA ICA is pleased to present Seed, a solo exhibition by sculptor Kendall Buster in conjunction with her solo presentation Solstice, currently on view at the Krieger Museum in Washington, D.C. Seed makes up the third of a series of 3 shows marking the 50th anniversary of TEFRA ICA. This exhibition highlights a very important milestone in the Institute's history by emphasizing the significance of place while examining themes of life, future, and innovation. In both exhibitions, Seed and Solstice, there is a push and pull of the interior and exterior, provoking the question of whether the viewer is looking in, looking out, looking up, looking down, or whether they are being looked at.
I'm Kendall Buster. I'm an artist trained in the sciences, and I see myself as both an artist and an educator. I currently live and work in Richmond, Virginia, and I teach at Virginia Commonwealth University in the Department of Sculpture and Extended Media. The exhibition Seed is made up of 2 parts. First, Radial Spin is a large site-responsive sculpture that's created with 2 chambers, one connecting to the other, constructed with what I would call a skeleton and a skin approach. And what I mean by that is the skeleton is like the drawing in space. This is a hand-built piece. These are bent steel rod frames, and then the frames are powder-coated with an industrial finish. The skin that goes over is a shade cloth that's used often in agricultural applications. And the reason I use it is that it creates a really wonderful kind of luminous effect because it's knitted rather than woven. So there's a wonderful kind of moire pattern that happens with it. Shade cloth is used in architectural applications because it provides shade. And so this particular shade cloth is rated a certain percentage of how much sun comes through for the plants or for the architectural shade port structure. And I found that kind of interesting because it's almost as if you're shading on that frame, on that skeleton, that drawing in space. That shading has a certain density, a kind of porousness, lightness, and semi-transparency of the material. You'll notice when you come into either chamber, you're drawn to this center axis. That's why I called it radial spin. That's where the axis is spinning. This invites one to engage with sight lines. Is not only this idea of looking and being looked at, but it also is a very plant-like form. And so you're looking through from one chamber into the other. Radial spin is a revisiting of an exploration that goes back to 2009. I had the opportunity to go to Berlin and actually make a piece at an artist residency. So when I came to look at the TEFRA site, like the space in Berlin, the TEFRA space came with these 2 columns. Rather than to ignore the columns or to pretend that they weren't there, it became more and more clear to me that working with radially spun form that spun through those 2 columns and really worked with a more intimate kind of ceiling space. It was really wonderful to be able to revisit that idea because the original idea had been done in a insect screening, so it was more of an industrial feeling. And I had always wanted to revisit that form with a material that behaved more like glass or behaved more like an ephemeral kind of cloud-like form. Also in the exhibition Seed is a series of drawings. These are new growth series and they're ongoing. Some of the forms are very resonant and other forms are referencing forms that one might imagine. These are graphite on mylar that have then been scanned and taken to digital print so that they're more resilient and also gives me the opportunity to really work with them more casually in configurations. one of the drawings is echoed in the sculpture. And that you can see as a form within a form, one form merging with the other, and in a sense, penetrating the other. And it makes me think a lot about Linnaeus and some of his writings about the eroticism of plants, which I find really intriguing. Another favorite in the drawings is from a sculpture that I've began to work out in sketch form, a pumpkin shape, very dark, deep, rich graphite color. The drawings are always in conversations with the sculptures. The drawings are sometimes the beginning, and that's where the ideas are worked out. And other times the drawings are more a reflection after the sculptures have been built, maybe a remembrance or maybe another variation through the imagination. The exhibition Seed is in conversation with the site at the Krieger Museum. Solstice plays on shadow, and the form is articulated by shapes that come not only from the built three-dimensional forms, but the ways that shadows play on the planar surfaces. These pieces are made piece by piece, so it's really about parts to whole. I love the idea of a sculpture that grows out of an accumulation of parts. Each of these pieces was made individually, and they're almost like puzzle parts. The configuration will change depending on the site. They're displayed. They're made from simple paper, foam core, cardstock, with tabletop model making techniques. And that's what I love about it, because each of the parts is really made with something that's handheld. And so for me, it's a very special piece because there's an intimacy in the way that this piece is made. My hope was that a viewer would feel as if they have a bird's eye view of a city that, on the one hand, is inviting, the detail, the play on scale, but also gives a little bit of a sense of foreboding. One can see their mazes, their viewing portions that are looking like surveillance towers. The city has a lot of complex parts, but there's also a sense of control. I think that's interesting because, in a way, architecture is very controlling. How it frames, how it directs, how a window, when closes, being in an architectural space that feels confining or feels protective. I hope that the exhibition will bring the viewer a sense of curiosity and wonder. I'm inspired by forms in nature and by architecture that draws from forms in the natural world. You'll see in the work complex curves, forms that merge one into another. And in the way that their architecture comes from the fact that they are both object and space. I'm also really interested in the idea of porous membranes, which maybe comes from interest in biology. One of the things that's really in play is a sense of inside and outside and the play of one with the other. There's a play of what's revealed and what's concealed.